Okay, let's talk about closing costs. You're ready to buy or sell a house. What about closing costs? What are those, by the way? Okay, if you're selling a house, closing costs are generally real estate agent commissions, title fees, and if you want to think about this as a closing cost, your property taxes, which we can talk about that in just a second. And if you're buying a house, your closing costs are usually loan related. So if you're a cash buyer, and part of your negotiation is for the seller to pay your buyer agent commission, which is often how it goes. Everything's negotiable, but that's usually how it works. And you're buying cash, you're not going to have very much in the way of closing costs, maybe just a little bit of title fees and your share of that, but usually not very much. Most of the time as a buyer, closing costs are loan related. So it's things that your lender is requiring you to put up front in addition to your down payment, such as a few months of property taxes, a few months of insurance. We call that setting up your escrows, appraisal, loan origination fee. If you're buying a $400,000 house, your closing costs might be somewhere in the neighborhood of $8,000. Maybe you've negotiated for the seller to pay your closing costs as part of the deal. Not a bad idea if they'll go for it. Then you just come up with your down payment. And the seller's over there thinking, hey, I'm already paying the agent commission and title fees, and now I have to pay $8,000 of your closing costs. Well, maybe they do if they want to sell the house. But sellers should go into a listing with eyes wide open, knowing that's often how the negotiation goes. So when you price the house, you have to keep that in mind of what your bottom line is going to be. My general advice to a seller is to think of everything in a deal as part of their bottom line. Okay, how much are they going to walk away with? And then they can either come down on the price or agree to pay buyer closing costs. All of that with in mind of how it affects their bottom line. And a buyer is going into it usually thinking about cash out of pocket. Okay, they've got their monthly payment that they're going to have, and then how much cash are they going to have out of pocket for their down payment and their closing costs. So closing costs for buyer loan related, usually. Closing costs for a seller are usually commission and title fees. Last thing I'll say is with property taxes, a seller has to give a buyer credit for the portion of the year that they own the house. If they're selling halfway through the year, the buyer is going to pay the full property tax bill at the end of the year. So the seller has to give a buyer a credit. Usually a seller has set aside money for that in escrows. They'll get that refunded. If you have questions about any of this, I recommend talking to a real estate expert.